everyone. And thanks for joining us for this discussion this afternoon. I think it's going to be a very rich and positive discussion. We should have some great learnings coming out of this, and I certainly believe that our panelists are going to be able to allow us to explore the subject very fully. So today we're going to be talking about banks, the MSME sector, the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector, and navigating through crisis. And of course, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and one of the sectors that is being looked to by a lot of people is the MSME sector, to try to see how we can try to recover the economies of the Caribbean. And certainly banks obviously play a crucial role in that relationship and in trying to boost that sector. So one of the things that we wanted to explore as the Caribbean Association of Banks is that we wanted to look at how banks are currently working with the small business sector, and how they can do more to support that sector, how they can really contribute to the small business sector as an engine for growth in the Caribbean and across the various territories of the region. Somewhat serendipitously, because we actually have had a conversation with the organization earlier this year, word came recently that the Eastern Caribbean, the ECPCGC, which I always like saying, even though it's a little bit of a tongue twister, the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, had formally started operation, and that its first partners had been signed up, namely Bank of St. Lucia, obviously in St. Lucia, and National Bank of Dominica, again, obviously in Dominica. And so we were pleased to reach out to all three entities and to start a conversation with them as to how we could talk a little bit about supporting the MSME sector. And so we're pleased to have this afternoon with us Carmen Gomez-Trigg. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, based in St. Kitts and Nevis. Good afternoon, Carmen. Just need to
Hi, good afternoon, Terry. Thank you very much for having me.
A little bit of a rainy day across the region, but we'll try to lighten it up a little bit. We also have joining us from the Commonwealth of Dominica, Joel Dennis, Executive Manager for Credits and Business Development at the National Bank of Dominica Limited. Good day to you, Joel.
Good afternoon to you, Terry. Thank you for having me.
I actually spoke to one of your compatriots earlier today and was told that it was less rainy today than it has been for much of the week, which is similar, I think, to what we're experiencing here in St. Lucia.
Indeed.
And I know it must be a little bit worrisome for you in Dominica when you see a little bit more rain than normal.
It is, but we still like the rain every now and then.
Especially given the recent weather.
Exactly.
And last but certainly by no means least, Aletta Ratty-Michelle. She's the Senior Manager for Retail Banking at the Bank of St. Lucia. Good afternoon to you, Aletta.
Hi, Terry, and hi, everybody. Thank you for having me this afternoon on this call. Looking forward to my discussion.
And Aletta is just around the corner from me, so I don't have to ask her about the weather at all. So without further ado, we're nearly at capacity on our Zoom call. So again, just to remind you, you can post your questions in the chat or actually use the Q&A function where it will be seen more immediately by all of the panelists. We're also going to be, we are live streaming on Facebook, so you can hop onto our Facebook page, CABASSOC, and you'll be able to access the live stream there. And of course, it'll be archived there as well, so you can watch it in perpetuity or as long as Mark Zuckerberg keeps Facebook alive. So let's start off with what I think should be a fairly straightforward question, certainly for Carmen. Carmen, we talk about micro, small, and medium enterprises and the MSME sector as a whole. What would you say are the principal hallmarks of that sector? What defines an MSME?
Well, I'll give you a definition that we use because there's a myriad of definitions across the various organizations across the various islands. CDB has one, but for our purposes, what we look for is a business with less than 50 permanent employees, an annual revenue of less than 2 million EC dollars. And those are basically our hallmarks that, so I'm gonna concentrate on those. But what we found across the region is that the MSME sector is plagued by a high level of informality. They're basically unregistered. There is normally some commingling of funds between the business and the personal coffers. And the level of literacy, financial literacy, is a little bit not too great. So we've had our bankers complain about that. And these qualities have sort of increased the risk. And you know that our banks are not high risk lenders. We tend to be risk averse. So therefore, it means that these qualities have exacerbated the situation with the inability of the MSMEs to get loans. So I think I'll leave it there for now because I think we're going to develop the theme as we go a little bit further.
Well, let me turn to Joel and Arletta. Let's start with you, Arletta. Purely from a lending perspective, talk to me a little bit about some of the opportunities and challenges that the SME sector presents for banks.
Okay, Terry. The MSME, well, micro, small, we include the micro businesses as well. The MSME sector is critical to the development of our small island economies. Of course, we know that. More than 70% of companies within the Caribbean are MSMEs. These businesses are seen as critical contributors to innovation, to our economies in many ways. When you look at competition and innovation, the capacity of these small businesses to bring their offerings to the market is critical. So accessing financing for these businesses, the ability of SMEs to access finances would really help them to develop their business. So they have an opportunity to grow their business with financing. And in addition to growing the business, this could assist our economy in providing jobs, so reducing the unemployment in our local economy. So there are opportunities for the SME market, SME customers. We see great things in the pipeline coming through. We see a lot of small businesses coming up in St. Lucia alone. We have over 5,000 registered small businesses, and these may not all have access to financing at this point in time. So there is opportunity for them to grow in terms of us financial institutions providing them with the access to financing. Say, for example, you have a poultry farmer. Let's go to the farming community. That farmer may be providing chickens, not live chickens, but providing chickens to a supplier. However, with financing from the financial institution, they would be able to probably package that, that chicken and ask for a higher premium, thereby increasing their profits. So in essence, us as lending institutions, if we were to support them, we would help them grow and expand on their business and even further diversify later on down the line. So an MSME today, a small business today, can develop and grow into a corporation, a large corporation later down the line. So these are the opportunities I see for the small and medium enterprise sector in the region.
Well, Alessa, I think you've really hit the nail on the head in terms of some of the opportunities that present themselves through the MSME sector. Joel, I don't know if you want to take we've just had a debate in the House of Assembly in St. Lucia, so I don't know if you want to play the role of opposition and talk to us about some of the challenges that pertain as far as lending with the MSME sector.
So yes, so like Aleta said, the sector really has a lot of potential, not just for the economy, but also for the banks who themselves lend to those sectors, those enterprises. And it is an area for us to really grow our asset base, our revenues, and not just to the companies themselves, but also to the employees of those SMEs. However, we are always mindful of the challenges that are involved in those sectors. That is why, for the most part, banks tend to shy away from lending to that sector because we know, like Carmen mentioned, one of the key hallmarks is that there is no separation between the company and the owner and the business. So quite often you have the business revenues being the source of income for the owners. So that in itself often puts a challenge in assessing whether this company is viable, whether it can survive in the long run. And when you add to that the fact that most of those companies do not even keep financial records, so you have no idea as to how the company is really performing, as to whether the revenues they generate, whether there is actual profits, can they afford to service the loans that they are requesting. So that is one of the key challenges. And even though you may want to take a chance, okay, fine, I think it's going to be a very good company, good business. But then as banks, we often want there to be some element of risk sharing. And most times the persons with the great ideas, they have no capital to put into the company. So there is no level of equity, no level of collateral pledge. So most times if the banks are to enter into that realm, it's like the banks are the only ones at risk if this business fails. And that is why at this point in time, we are so very excited about the opportunities of the ECPCGC because it does provide us a chance to at least overlook that element of risk sharing. So we have a partner to share that risk with. And generally, we also note that these small businesses, they have ideas and it may require a bit more hand-holding, a bit more support to at least take the idea from conception to market and even accessing the market. So where it is you may have a small poultry farm in Dominica, is the Dominica market enough to have this company at least remain viable for the long term? So how do we get them to access markets, even generally or internationally, to at least develop and further the business? And there we see a need for a lot of partnership between the banks, the entities, and also the governments. Okay, how do we support those companies in accessing the markets? And while on the idea of support, we also need to play our part to train those SMEs to at least develop all the business acumen they need to at least really get that business up and running. So while there are many challenges, I think it's really a chance for us as bankers, as governments, associations, to really partner, to work with them, to get them to where they can really be, so we can really realize all the benefits that the SMEs bring to the table.
Now, we've actually launched our first poll, so you can go to the poll question, which is coming up in a moment. How important is the SME sector as a contributor to the economies of the Caribbean? So you can go ahead and vote on that, and we'll let you know the results as we go on. I think it could also, one of the things that, and I think we're getting almost a unanimous response so far, that is absolutely critical. We also recently posted, as part of our financial literacy series, we posted an interview with Professor Jeremy Stephen, out of Barbados, economist and in fact a lecturer in banking and finance, where he talks about the importance of the small and medium enterprise sector and ways that that sector can be supported. But he also talks a little bit about the fact that banks typically tend to be risk averse. So Arletta, coming back to you, are you comfortable that banks, not just your own, but across the Caribbean, so I'm asking you to speak for yourself, but also for on behalf of our members, are you satisfied that banks are in tune with the needs of the MSME sector?
Terry, I would say that to some extent we are. We try very hard because I believe banks understand the needs of the SME sector. However, we believe that in order for us to bridge the gap between where the SME sector may be and the requirements that the banking sector or the financial institution may have with regards to providing finance to those MSMEs, there needs to be some form of financial literacy, okay? But I believe we as banks try very hard to understand the MSME sector in terms of what they offer, how they develop the economies that we are operating in, and how they can further support not only their own business, but the economies in which we operate. So, for example, corporate social responsibility is something which is I mean great among businesses, and we see more and more that businesses try to support the economy in that regard. So us as banks, yes, we do understand to some extent what the MSME sector is, and we increasingly try to accommodate them in accessing financing. But the MSMEs must, like Joel alluded to earlier, they have to keep financing records so that we would be able to provide that support to them on a timely basis and in a manner which will meet their needs, so to speak. So we do very much try to understand the MSME sector, although there are guidelines that we have to follow in terms of meeting their needs. And I want to mention that the ECPCGC has provided us with an excellent opportunity to at least meet that need of the MSME sector at this point in time. And of course, I'm looking forward to great things happening with this partnership that we share at the moment. So I know for sure with the pandemic, we've seen an increasing number of small businesses coming up, and they're coming up in various areas that we may not have envisaged that they would be established. So for example, we have quite a number of small tech companies coming up, and this is the way we see things going. And so we try to understand, and as we move into the future, into the near future, I would say, we as bankers try to understand these businesses a lot more so that we can meet the need that is coming up at this point in time. So in a way, I would say, yes, we understand the MSME sector. In terms of meeting their needs, we have to meet each other halfway for us to be able to do this effectively. So that's where we're at this point in time.
Sorry, if you go through a Zoom call without somebody being accidentally muted, I mean, is it really a Zoom call? But yeah, so that's actually one of the things that Professor Stephen alludes to in our discussion, that he talks about needing to make a degree of compromise. Now, Joel, in recent years, of course, Dominica has had to navigate through more than its share of weather-related crises, as I mentioned a little while ago. The passage of major storms really severely affecting your business sector and the economy as a whole. How have small businesses been affected? How have they reacted? And how has the bank supported them in helping to react to those crises?
So yes, like you're right. Dominica has had its fair share of hurricanes, and our SMEs have been at the brunt of the impact. So in addition to the vast damage of plants and businesses, we note that they had a loss of markets, loss of access to supply chain, and quite often those companies had no means of recourse. Insurance was often inadequate. They had no reserves to at least get back on their feet. They were struggling as to how do I access my customers in this new normal. So we as a bank had to work with them, meet them halfway. We know, like we're doing now with the COVID situation, we did offer some moratorium. However, that in itself was inadequate to get them back up and running. So it's really, at some point, you really have to compromise, as I mentioned, and where you see you need to at least adjust your lending practices, your ratios, your benchmarks, and take that to the risk to at least get the companies back on their feet. So we would provide working capital access, even where based on the ratios we are seeing post-Maria, why this company cannot afford this, but you have to take a chance to at least work with them to really hold their hand and get them back to where they were on their feet again. So it even went beyond just the financing. It all went back to how do we provide advice? So how do I navigate this situation? How do I think creatively to access new markets, to find new ways of connecting with my clients? And I must say, we did see quite a bit of that creativity after Hurricane Maria, where the companies really had to find and come up with new ways to reach the clients to get back on the feet in quick time. And if I dare say, the fact that we were able to, for the most part, get back to some sense of normalcy after Hurricane Maria was testament to the creativity of our SMEs in redeveloping or improving the operations to take advantage of the new opportunities that came up from that. So yes, we saw the hardship, we saw the destruction, but there was also new opportunities from the hurricane that the SMEs took advantage of. And of course, one of the key takeaways from Hurricane Maria is the need for business community planning. So how are you preparing your business for those sort of things in the future? Have you reassessed your insurance coverage? Are you insuring for the right things? And quite often companies insure their assets because the banks mandate that. However, can we see insurance now as a means of managing my risk of loss of income? Am I insuring against any threats to my income stream, to my market? So we did see quite a bit of that emerging after Hurricane Maria. And of course, now with the COVID-19 situation, there are a lot of parallels between Maria and the COVID. Of course, there is not that much physical destruction, but the loss of market share, the loss of access to markets, your supply chain has been interrupted. Your employee, your workforce, how you organize your work has changed. So the companies now are really moving full gear ahead into ensuring that they have adequate plans in place. So while bigger companies take this for granted, it's accomplished, but for the small companies now, it is now becoming the buzzword where they are really taking this seriously and where many of the associations are really working with them hand in hand to get to the point where the businesses are becoming more nimble, that they can better adapt to any challenges, whether it's hurricane, whether it's the COVID-19 situation, anything similar. So the takeaway from that has been the need to be nimble and the need to always be prepared for anything, making sure you have the adequate plans, adequate insurances, and even the required reserves to at least meet your loan installments when when income is affected, or even how are you going to pay my employees? Because we know some sectors really rely on high skilled workers and they can't afford to make them redundant in a pandemic. So how are you preparing yourself to keep those employees on your payroll in the event that your revenues are impacted? So again, it's just the need for us to reassess our business models and to make sure that we are nimble enough to rise to any challenges that arise from crisis situations.
Thanks for that, Joel. And I guess, unfortunately, you could almost say that it's a little bit of practice run that you've had with the storms over the years for this current crisis. And in terms of our polling, let me just end the polling, but we had 86 respondents, 77, an overwhelming 90% agree that the SME sector as a contributor to the economies of the Caribbean is absolutely critical. Only 8 say that it's just fairly important, and we have one outlier that says it's not important at all. So there's always that one, I suppose. But let me turn my attention now to Carmen. And Carmen, a good time to bring you back into the conversation because we've had a summation of where we are and where the banks feel that they have stood in terms of their relationship with the SME sector. Can you give me a succinct explanation of what the ECPCGC is all about? How is it intended to really impact the growth of the SME sector?
Okay, so the ECPCGC is really a guarantee fund, and what it does is it creates a tripartite relationship between the fund, that's ECPCGC, the borrower, that's the MSME, and the bank, who we call a participating lender. What this means is that the risk of a loan is shared in 3 ways. So the MSME would have a project that he or she wants to undertake, and he would have to have a 25% of that project cost, either in sweat equity or however, cash or whatever. And then he or she would approach the bank for the remainder. So the bank would do all the normal checks because this is not a means whereby if you're a weak MSME that you will get to. You need to be able to show the bank that you can repay the loan, that you can service the loan. So we need to look at your projections. We need to talk the bank. I'm saying I mean the bank. The bank is ECPCGC's representative in these negotiations. So the bank will satisfy itself that the loan is a good one, the project is a good one, that the external environment is a good environment that would really support the growth of this particular venture. And once the bank has satisfied itself that all of these things are in place, the bank would say, well, now I'm satisfied that your project is a good project, your plans are good, your projections are good. You can repay the loan if we were to grant you the loan. Now let me see what security, as they say in the Caribbean, what collateral you have to put down for this loan. And whereas in times previous to now, if there was not sufficient collateral, the bank would turn down the loan. What we are saying to the bank is, if the plan is good, the repayment prospects look good, you are comfortable with the loan, you're comfortable with the project, then send it to us. We would put up 75% of that collateral that you're missing, so that where you would have had to turn back that particular applicant, you can now say to him, there is a fund that we can tap into, which would provide up to 75% of the collateral that you're missing. There are certain restrictions and so on that you must abide to. There's a fee payable for this fund, but without the fund, you would not have been able to get the loan. You would not be able to go to grow and develop. You would have had to access the payday lenders or or the money lenders or so on. And we know that those rates are usurious. We know that we don't want our MSMEs going to those particular kinds of facilities, because it really, a lot of the money goes into payment of interest for these particular lenders. So we want to keep them within the banking community, within the established financial institutions. And for this reason, we are in partnership with the banks, and soon the credit unions and the development banks, so that we can provide that bit of collateral that is missing. Now, in the Caribbean, our collateral rates are very high because our bankers are risk averse, and I think they have good reason for that averseness, because we have seen MSMEs take loans for business, supposedly for business, and they go on cruises and they do, other things with the money, except go put it into the business. So they have reason. I really can't fault the banks all the time. And we are going to ensure that we make sure that the measures are in place to guard against those abuses of the facilities. So we put that in place, and it has not come just like that. This project has been around since 2015, 16, 17, where studies have been done to determine what are some of the best solutions to this credit crunch that the MSMEs are facing. And we have seen that this particular solution has worked well in developing countries over time. And therefore, we want to make sure that it works in our own situation. And one of the good things about it is that it's not a national program. Because very often, when we hear about national programs, we hear people who access those programs saying, this is a grant, not a loan, I don't have to pay it back and so on. No, not in this particular instance. In this particular instance, this is an initiative of the World Bank and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, with all the six members of the OECS putting money into this venture. So therefore, it's not a national program, and it's not a national government's funds. It's a coalition of the six member states. They are Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So all of these stakeholders have put in their hard-earned funds into the corporation to make sure that it can be leveraged to provide some measure of relief to the MSMEs. So we have a fiduciary responsibility to all of these governments and all the stakeholders to be able to work and for the betterment of the MSMEs, because we, at the end of the day, ECPCGC has to provide, statistics to the stakeholders, to the government, to the day, and provide reasons why the fund has not worked if it doesn't work, and we must provide justification and so on. So it's a very closely monitored system. There's a lot of scrutiny on ECPCGC. So that's with regard to the money part. We've heard mention from Arletta and from Joel, and even from yourself, Terry, that there's commingling of funds, there's a lack of financial literacy, etc., where the MSMEs are not up to the level that the banks would like them to be at. And for this reason, one of our mandates is to do capacity building with the MSMEs. And for this reason, we would be partnering with the established trainers in the region to be able to roll out a series of training sessions. We've been ably assisted in this by the German Savings Bank, who are now in the region, working with banks in the region to set up MSME departments. So we are ably assisted in this venture by the German Savings Bank, and we'll be rolling out the training series and the capacity building series for the MSMEs, because we think that the equation is not complete unless you have the training bit. So you can't give money to somebody who don't know how to manage money. So you could say goodbye one time. So what we need to do is to make sure that, yes, you would get the money, but the training is also a part of the mix. It is a very, very crucial part of the mix, because the bankers, we've done some training with the bankers, and they've all said, we sometimes you have to sit with light bills and phone bills and so on, because the MSMEs are not depositing the funds. We can't see a track record and so on. So MSMEs, I am begging you, you want to come on board, you need to get your act together. You need to show the banks that you are okay with financial literacy, that you can separate your business funds from your personal funds and so on. There's a lot to be learned, and we think that we would be able to make some inroads into the financial literacy gaps that we are seeing.
for that very, very complete answer, Carmen. Again, just a reminder that you can drop your questions in the Q&A. You can also post your questions on our Facebook Live or on our Twitter page, where we will certainly be getting to them momentarily. We also have the chat available as well. Now, Arletta and Joel, your organizations are among the first to have signed up with the corporation in June of this year. You have been engaged in a pilot program, getting training in the guarantee process. A number of other organizations have been involved and have signed up, but you guys are the first to market, so congratulations to you. But I want to ask you, how does the existence of a facility such as this one help make your organization more competitive and help provide a boost to entrepreneurs?
I'll go first. The agreement with ECPCG provides, well, Bank of St. Lucia and Joel Bodies Bank with a very unique opportunity to provide funding to a wider cross-section of MSMEs, knowing that these businesses do not have to provide full collateral for the financing request. So when we were approached earlier in the year, we saw the opportunity that was presented to us, and we couldn't let that opportunity pass us by, because we know the challenge that the MSME sector experiences. So Bank of St. Lucia really wanted to be part of this arrangement so that we could provide the benefit to our SME customers. In the past, it has really been a challenge, I can tell you, Terry, to lend to this sector, because most of those businesses operate through, say, for example, you have a family-owned business operating on leased premises, and they do not have that type of collateral to provide. Say, for example, they come for a $100,000 loan to expand their business. They do not have the collateral to provide to the bank for that $100,000 loan. So of course, we would turn that customer away. However, with this arrangement with the ECPCGC, if the customer were to come to us for $100,000 now, all they would have to provide is 25% of that, or equivalent to $25,000. Whether it's in cash or kind. So it really provides those MSMEs with an opportunity to expand their businesses. And I couldn't see how Bank of St. Lucia could pass on an opportunity like that, because it really helps us to boost this sector. And we're not only doing it to benefit the bank, but we see the impact it's going to have on the economy at large. So we want our SMEs to come to us, visit us, ask questions, do not be shy about it. And of course, we have an entity which can provide additional assistance in terms of guidance. We have the SEDU, the Small Business Development Unit, which can provide some guidance to our MSMEs. So we're asking that business owners, please ask the questions. We want you to ask the questions, because otherwise you'll be left in the dark. There is this opportunity, take advantage of it, you know. So we look at it as both beneficial to the bank as well as beneficial to the MSME and the economy at large, not thinking about ECPCGC, because they too will benefit from that opportunity which they have offered to banks in the region and SME clients in the region.
Well, thanks, Arletta.
So yes, Arletta would have covered all the benefits of this program. However, for us, we see it as a means to further extend our engagement with the sector. We have long recognized the need for us to do a bit more into financing the sectors of getting them up to speed. And over the past years, we have been doing quite a bit of outreach to try to get the clients up to the expertise that they need to at least be ready for financing. And where we were able to provide financing, we did partner with other agencies who had higher risk thresholds than we do to ensure that there is some level of financing for the sector. So now that this has come on board, we see it as a chance for us to really do some meaningful contribution to the sector and to play our part in really advancing the country's economy, because we have all heard about how beneficial SMEs are to our country's development. So through that program, we expect that we will greatly increase our lending to the sector, and even with the partnership with ECPCGC to even improve the expertise of the owners of those businesses. So we see it as a two-part in the deal. One, we get to really contribute to the development of those businesses, both financially, but as well as in terms of the skills that they need to really move the company forward. So we are hoping by removing the headache of where getting funds to grow, that the owners can now spend more time thinking of how am I going to grow my business, spending more time now thinking of the growth path, as opposed to thinking of where is the money going to come from. So now you know where the money is going to come from. You can spend all the time you have now and you think of innovative ways to move your business further, to move from a small business to a large corporation, because that is really our objective. We don't want them to remain small forever. It is to at least give you the stepping stone to at least transform the business from a small business to a large corporation of the future. So we are very excited about the opportunity to really help our SMEs grow and really improve our economy.
Thanks much, Joel. And I said at the top of the conversation that, you know, a lot of people talk about the role of the MSME sector in helping build the economies of the Caribbean. I'm going to throw this out to the whole panel. I want you to answer briefly, but to have a little bit of a think about it. What is the role of the MSME sector specifically in helping the territories of the region survive the pandemic and thrive beyond the pandemic, eventually to restore and hopefully build back better the economies of their respective jurisdictions and the Caribbean as a whole? Don't all stay on mute now.
Sorry, Jerry. If I may go.
Yep.
We know that MSMEs have been hard hit, and we hear it all the time. The sales income have reduced significantly. Orders are on the decline, and small businesses are on the decline, I would say, because there's domino effect when it comes to each sector supporting each other. And we know some of our economies are significantly dependent on the tourism industry. And I can speak for St. Lucia in particular. When we look at what is happening in the economy, you have farmers being affected, you have wholesalers being affected in terms of how much they can produce to the market now. So we see that as not just a challenge, but there is opportunity for businesses to probably look at diversifying their product range to remain competitive and survive during this period. So a business may start with one product line, but due to the pandemic, they realize that something else that they can invest in to increase their sale or to maintain their sales figures, they can probably diversify slightly to meet that need, so that surviving this pandemic, because we realize the pandemic is not going anywhere anytime soon. So we need to be able to ride that storm. So small businesses, they will survive at the end of the day, but we need to provide them with some assistance in terms of maybe extending a little bit to them, working with them to see how best we can assist in providing that extra financing, or providing them with a cash flow facility that can help them ride this storm within the short to medium term. so that they can really ride this. Now, I know the ECCB has extended the moratoriums to the economies of the Caribbean. So some businesses have taken advantage of that, which puts a little more cash flow in their hands to manage during this time. So we are not closed to maintaining that relationship with our small business. We know they're going through this crisis and they're trying. This is new to us, to everybody. And so we are trying to see how best we can meet the small businesses halfway in terms of making them comfortable during this period, comfortable enough to ride the storm so that they can find their way through this pandemic. So we're not close to it. I know Joel will come in and say something, and Carmen as well, but we try and we will support our small businesses to see that they survive during this time.
Carmen? Sorry, Carmen, you and I go on.
Yes, we know that our MSMEs have been through the ringer, I have to say. I have had conversations with the general managers and lending officers of the banks in the 6 member states that I called before. And it's a situation of uncertainty. And there is a wait and see approach. But I think that even in the midst of uncertainty, action has to happen. It so happens that this program should have been launched earlier this year before COVID and so on. Fate has it that it has come at this point in time. And we know that we are going to be working with our partners to look at innovative measures that we can come up with to help our MSMEs. But there's a saying that God helps those who help themselves. And I know that there are some MSMEs who shifted gears when the pandemic happened. For instance, we have situations where there are people who sell street food, and they started shifting gears and saying, okay, so in lockdown, I can't go on the street and sell and ply my trade anymore. I'm going to put something on my social media, on my Facebook page, and I'm going to do deliveries. And we had, in Trinidad, we have something like doubles that you buy and you eat right there and so on. It's a really good delicacy, a good snack, high fiber, high protein, etc., vegan and everything. And we had people packaging their doubles for sale. And they were using the gas stations and other outlets to sell. And I mean, they didn't make the same amount of money that they would have made before, but they certainly were able to keep their employees on the payroll, pay some bills, and keep the business going until such time as we could open back up. And that is innovation. Innovation does not necessarily come from going behind a computer and doing a Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. That's not only what innovation is. Those people have been very innovative, and their innovation has caused them to survive. And I know that everybody has 1 or 2 smartphones, but the question I have to pose to our business people, are you putting your smartphones to good use? Is it just to do a Facebook or do an instant post something funny or whatever? No. There's a lot more use we can get out of social media. Take your business to social media, do something on your platform, put up a video showing how you make your produce, do something. Show the wider world what you are all about and switch gears, become nimble. And I could remember sometime I had a client, I was working with IFC, and I had a client in Jamaica, a microfinance client. And the GM was saying to me, there was a time when things were really, really bad, not only in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean. And the hairstylists were hit very, very hard. What did they do? Some of them went down to downtown Kingston and they rented a little doorway from a business person or something. And they set up and they did some work and asked pedestrians to pass. And they say, you doing here? Is yes, come and check me this afternoon. They were able to keep their trade going. Some of them went into wig making. And so they were nimble, and it is the nimble entrepreneurs that survive. So that's my lesson. We would embrace the nimbleness. We would work with our partners because we don't work directly with the entrepreneur, but we would work with our partners to ensure that the ones that are nimble, that the ones that are ready to switch gears and say, okay, so I can't do this, but I could do this, because entrepreneurs always have an idea. They always have an idea. The ones that we can embrace, we would embrace, and we would help you get up and do something. We would help you with your training. We would help you with your finances. Once you can show us that you have the means to repay and that you're willing to work with our bankers, we would help you. We stand ready to assist.
Thanks a lot for that, Carmen. And I can hear the passion in your voice, talking about this subject. And I think it was last week or week before, a friend of mine hosts a podcast called the ICT Pulse. One of the things that she was discussing recently was digital literacy. And of course, we talk so much about digital literacy in these times in particular. And her guest was saying that, we have a lot of kids, and we assume that because they're always in a phone, they're always in a device, that they must be digitally literate, when in fact, they've never used email. They've never gone on LinkedIn. They've never done a Zoom. And you ask them to do some of these things and they really can't. It's the same is true of some of our businesses, that they may know how to set up a Facebook page, but do they know how to monetize a Facebook page? Are they using all of those facilities that are available on social media, even as simple a thing as WhatsApp? Are they using all of those mechanisms? And all of that goes back to the idea of resilience. And just FYI, we had a lady who did the same thing with her doubles in St. Lucia. And I was one of the first to take advantage of her services because it was so convenient. I didn't have to line up and wait for my doubles. I just went and collected and I was good to go. So that was excellent. Joel, very quickly, we've had contributions from the two ladies. Just very quickly, your thoughts on how the sector can help us move past the pandemic?
So very quickly, is just to really capitalize on this innovation and that Carmen speaks about. However, it's not just for the SMEs, but also for the banks to have to be innovative in their response to the SMEs, because while they are playing the part to remain viable during this pandemic, we have to do our part to support them as they navigate those challenges. And we know that without the staying open, the unemployment rate is just going to skyrocket. So what it is we are willing to do to partner with them, to keep the employees on the payroll, to keep their doors open, so to at least reward the innovation. So it has to be a partnership between the SMEs and the bankers to really ensure that they remain open, so that the entire economy at least can have some level of survival during this time. Of course, we are still uncertain as to when this is going to get under control. So it is critical that we work with them, that they survive, and that they keep the breads on the tables of our people.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Joel. Carmen, obviously this is a facility that's specific to the Eastern Caribbean, but we've seen other, if not ancillary or related facilities being deployed recently. In fact, in Jamaica, I know that they've done a lot of work in terms of small business loans, and we have a conversation next Wednesday with some of our stakeholders in Jamaica as well, that I hope people will be able to tune into. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what they've done during the pandemic. But you obviously have done a lot of work in terms of the use of partial credit guarantee schemes as a solution for economic growth, having worked previously with the Canadian International Development Association, IDB, and the EU. What do you see as being the applicability of a facility like this to the wider Caribbean? And is it something that has already being done or being contemplated in places like Jamaica, Bahamas, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, even the non-English speaking territories of the region?
We do have a program right now. We have two programs right now, one in Barbados, which was recently enhanced, and one in Jamaica that was also recently enhanced. We have had some failures in the region, and I have to say that one has to be, as the administrator of the guarantee fund, you have to be very careful about the partners that you let into the fund, because a fund is a strong it's so the banks have a responsibility to take the shareholders' money and make sure that we can leverage it as much as possible to make sure that as many MSMEs as possible get the guarantees that they need. So we have to ensure that our partners are strong as well. Now, the credit guarantee is not a new thing. It has been around since the 1950s in the what you call the first world countries, the UK, US, Canada, Italy. It has also been around in Latin America as well. And we do have South Korea and Japan. I think South Korea joined around the 1970s, 1980s, and they are leading in the number of worldwide. They've got two large agencies, and they do a lot because South Korea grew out of into a very strong economy, and this is one of the ways that they helped build their entrepreneurial sector. So I think that if we can look at who we are letting into our partnerships, who we are letting into our banks as borrowers, and we look and see where the gaps are, and so on. We do the capacity building as well. I think we are onto a good thing. And I think I need to mention that Caribbean Development Bank has a new initiative as well, where they are going to work with the countries, the borrowing member countries, to see whether there is need for national programs as well. So there is that as well. I think that people are seeing that if the guarantee scheme is properly managed, it can really redound to the benefit of the MSMEs and to the benefit of the economies. And one other plug I want to put in for Dominica. We have a special concession for the Calinago people of Dominica who cannot give up their the places where they live as collateral. So we do have that for Dominica. So a lot of background work went into this fund, studies and town halls and toing and froing and getting the feedback from the stakeholders and from civil society. And I think that we have a business model that we can work with. I know that COVID has come in the midst of it all and given us some shockwaves that I think we still kind of, trying to get away from. But with the willingness of our MSMEs, or the willingness of our partners, I think we can pave the way where we can see some growth and development come into the sector.
Thank you very much for that comment. We have a few questions. I think we have 6 questions in the Q&A and a couple more in the chat, 1 or 2 more on Facebook. So let's try to go through those really quickly as we wrap up this afternoon. And just thanks to everybody who participated in one way or another, and certainly thanks to our panelists. Let's go through the questions. Do the banks provide, and I think a number of them are rather straightforward. Do the banks provide business and finance assistance to help MSMEs set up their financial records? Either Arletta or Joel.
So not directly, however, we do partner with other agencies. We provide the financing through third parties to at least work with them to get to the point where they can prepare the official records. What we have done in the past is we had several roadshows where we went to various hamlets and we had various experts in the various field, financial record management and what have you, try to explain to the SMEs as to what exactly is required and the importance of the financial records. So we do it to some part, and where we cannot do it ourselves, we partner with other agencies to do that so that the SMEs can get the training they require.
Similar questions are coming from Wilbert Acti and from Fulton Nelson. How do we apply for a loan under the guarantee or partial guarantee? And what does a small business owner need to present to a financial institution when applying for a small business loan? And what I'm getting from the Q&A as well as from our Facebook chat is that there's still a lot of learning, a lot of education still to be done across the region in the sector to really try to get people up to speed. But I'll let you deal with those. How exactly does one go about, what does a small business owner need to present to start applying for a small business loan?
Well, first of all, Jerry, the MSME customer would have to either visit one of our branches or they can go to our website and obtain information from there as to the list of items that you need. But first and foremost, and most importantly, it's critical that the business has the financial documents in order so that we can deduce from their financials what it is we can do for them. So that's a critical aspect of providing finance. We need to know how the business has been performing. And under the ECPCGC agreement, that business has to be in operation for at least 2 years for us to be able to support them with that type of financing and guarantee. So with regards to obtaining financing, it's important that the MSME either visit one of our branches, speak to one of our loan officers, or they can go to our website to find the required information, the required documentation for us to be able to process a loan application for them. So, but the most important thing, like I said before, is the financial statements, which obviously some businesses would have probably internally or may have done through their accountants or through the assistance of their software, some form of software that they may have implemented for the business. So that is critical for us to determine whether the small business would have the capacity to repay the debt that they're asking or seeking financing for with regards to the expansion of the business.
Okay, so we're running up against time, but as I had proposed from the outset, thanks for that, Arletta. As I had proposed from the outset, one of the things that we want to do with our member organizations is that you essentially carry on the conversation. This is just basically a taste of what the ECPCGC offers and how banks are ready to work with the MSME sector to try to lift that sector and obviously beyond that to lift the economy as a whole. So hopefully this sparks that conversation and sparks the desire for small business owners to try to get that knowledge and try to interact more with their financial institutions to lift their own game. We have a question from the CEO of the Nevis International Bank and Trust, who's asking, how confident is the panel that the sector will be able to come back to the present position, say by the end of 2022? So we're looking at 24 months. How confident would you say you are that the MSME sector in the Caribbean will recover to some degree of parity within 24 months? Yeah, I know that's a tough one. Joel, let's go with you. Joel, let's you going, Carmen?
Yes, yes. I think I wanna give a shot at that, and then Joel, you could follow up. I want to say that in this state of insecurity, there is no guarantee. And for one to even hazard a guess that by 2022 things will be back to normal, it would be a little bit difficult, except if normal means always social distancing for the next 5 years, always wearing masks and what do you call it, the hand sanitizer and so on. Unless it means that, we really can't predict. We are hoping that with this program, we can get MSMEs back to some semblance of order or so. But we have to remember that some hotels have closed in the region. We are heavily tourist dependent. We can't open. We've seen what happened in some cases where the borders opened too soon. There was a new surge of COVID. So we really, really are in, to use a word that has been heavily labored, we are in unprecedented times, and therefore it's difficult to make an assessment. So I leave it to you, Joel, to take the mantle.
Well, I don't think I disagree with you on that comment, because it is so very difficult to predict as to what is going to happen, because we still have no idea as to when the actual cause, the pandemic, is going to get under control. So without that being under control, you really cannot hazard a guess as to when things are going to get back to normal. However, and even though when we do get back to some level of normalcy, I still don't believe we will get back to where we were pre-COVID. Because let's face it, some companies are not going to survive this pandemic. They have closed their doors and could very well be forever. But I think it's a chance for us to at least to look at any opportunities in this crisis to see how we can grow beyond where we were before the pandemic. Whether it's going to take us 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, the jury is still out on that. What we do know for sure is that we as people, we are known, we have it in us to bounce back from this and to get to even higher heights, better places than where we were before the pandemic. So there's a chance for us to get back better. As to how long that will be, I cannot see. There is no guarantees at this point in time.
All right, thanks for that, guys. Um, just a couple of quick ones. Well, I think that a lot of these questions that we're still getting in can be dealt with in terms of the relationship between the bank and the individual customers. So I do think we will go through some of these questions. Are the banks offering reduced rates to MSMEs? What initiatives have been done? Well, that one I think we'll take very quickly. Do all sectors have access to the guarantee scheme? I've shared the website. I've shared the ECPCGC website, ecpcgc.org. So please go and visit them. I'm sure Carmen will be very pleased if you do, and that she sees a major uptick in her visitor numbers after our conversation this afternoon. And I'm sure so too will our guests from Dominica and St. Lucia. So a number of those questions, as I said, can be dealt with in direct conversation. But one that I think that we do need to address, I mean, obviously this is part of the Caribbean Association of Banks initiative, the literacy initiative, and we have also during the course of this month, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank doing its literacy initiatives as well. What more do you do? In 60 seconds, what more do you think can be done to increase financial literacy among MSMEs or individuals? I'll start with you. 60 seconds. Sorry, Aletta.
We can, I know for sure we can partner with other organizations within the island in St. Lucia to see how best we can develop the SME sector. And that is providing customers with information really gives them the opportunity to grow, because without the knowledge, without the information, they would not know where to turn, how to turn, what is the best option for them. So I believe partnering with, say, for example, the ECPCG, SEDU, these organizations provide the guidance and direction to small businesses. So yeah, I mean, we need to be, I understand that we need to be more in tune with what's happening in the market in terms of meeting the customer halfway, but these organizations would certainly provide the basis for which small businesses can capitalize on to be able to meet the requirements that the banks are asking for with this initiative.
Joel?
Yes, so definitely it goes with education. And for me, I think we need to start changing the narrative that you're not doing this for the bank, you're doing this for you as a business owner so that you really know how your business is performing. Too many times you hear you need to prepare those financials for the bank. It's not being done for the bank, it's being done for you. Because you as the owner, you have to know how your business is performing. You have to know whether this is worth your while. So yes, we have to do a bit more if partnering with our various entities, the chambers of commerce, the various agencies we have, which provide training with for those things. And it has to be a bit more continuous. It cannot just be a one-time and done. There has to be a framework where there is a refresher or repeated course where they have access to this on an ongoing basis to allow them to at least remain relevant and to remain and keep in the mind the purpose for which they're preparing these financials and why it is important that they understand the finances of their business.
Okay, and finally, Carmen.
Okay, I want to go back on this digital thing again. It's a hobby of mine because I realize how much it's not used. And I want to say that, and I'm not making a plug for Republic Bank, so please don't interpret it as that. But Republic Bank has a website called Caribbean SME Toolkit, and it's loaded with information that can be used. If you don't know how to do something, check the internet. Google is sometimes some of our Bibles. I mean, not everything on Google is correct, but I can tell you that the information on the Republic Bank's Caribbean SME Toolkit website has been curated and so on. So I think I can send you there with confidence. In addition to that, you have the SBA website, the United States SBA website. There are some interesting articles there. You've got Entrepreneur, which is a publication. You can get it online. If you don't know, do seek the information. But I think part of the issue is that people have to be willing to admit that they don't know. And if you admit that you don't know, then you're going to go in search of knowledge. Thirst of knowledge is a really, really good thing. Thirst of knowledge has catapulted people from one level to another. So my advice is get thirsty, go look for the knowledge, and help yourselves, help your businesses, and help your country.
Thank you very much for that, Carmen, and thank you so much to you for being here with me this afternoon. Thank you to Arletta and Joel. I think a lot of information has come out this afternoon. I think you've really also sparked a lot of discussion. I'm seeing quite a bit happening on our Facebook page, and certainly the chat has been pretty active this afternoon. I think it's a topic that obviously is very important to us as a region, but certainly one that really touches a lot of individuals who would be right now struggling and looking for answers as to what is the next step. So the ECPCGC, obviously a fantastic facility. There's so much that I think people can learn about it and how it operates. As I said in the chat and elsewhere, I invite people to visit our website and see some of the other resources that we have for financial literacy. Tomorrow evening, we're going to be having another webinar with Tali Francis. He's formerly of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, and he is going to be talking about investing in preparation for retirement. So that should be something that people should have a lot of interest in and can tune into. It's going to be live on our Facebook page as well. But for this afternoon, thank you so much to my panelists for being with us. We thoroughly appreciate it, and I think so too will our audience across the Eastern Caribbean and across the Caribbean as a whole.
Thank you very much for having us, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, so that brings us to a close this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to welcoming you to further initiatives by the Caribbean Association of Banks as we continue to discuss financial literacy and we continue to proactively empower the Caribbean banking fraternity going forward. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.